So welcome everyone to the first talk of our spring weekend retreat, Pilgrimage of Peace. The theme for this retreat grew out of circumstances. Zen's long tradition of pilgrimage, monks traveling from master to master to check and hone their experience. And this warring world, met by our deep and urgent longing for peace. Pilgrimage of peace also points to what we're doing here, not going anywhere, embodying, expressing, exploring peace that is indivisible, not contingent, unconditional. Peace that is before knowing, beyond understanding, and intrinsic to who and what you are. One body, excluding nothing. Some Zen communities with more formal practices include a dedication at the beginning of a session or a retreat. May each person's powerful presence, dignified, profoundly introspective and deep, have peaceful consequences that cannot be fully foreseen, affecting visible and invisible worlds throughout time and space. This conjures an image of all of us together in one space, a zendo, in the deep silence of moment-to-moment shared practice, on and off the cushion. So what about now? What about each person's powerful presence, however we name it? Dignity, introspection, depth, composure, honesty, compassion, or uncertainty, inquiry, perseverance. What about our Zoom Zendo, the geography of this gathering, and practicing right where you are? Each person's powerful presence affecting peace, unforeseen, visible and not visible, beyond time and space, now. Ado Frances Carney comments on this dedication. She makes the analogy of sesshin with pilgrimage, a pilgrimage of exploration and discovery without going anywhere. Carney quotes the root teaching of Master Chosa. The entire universe in 10 directions is the whole human body. That's Chosa, this one entirety, your whole body in 10 directions. Then Carney writes, so in pilgrimage, there is no such thing as coming from one temple and going to another, even as we climb from mountain to mountain. When there is no gap between coming and going, we can say there is being pilgrimage. We might even say that to appear in human form is pilgrimage itself from the very beginning. For the whole of one's life, she writes, is hen-san. That's one of the Japanese words for pilgrimage. Hen meaning everywhere, and san meaning to visit or to study through experience. Everywhere we go, we are the study of the whole body of truth, Carney writes. As we practice, we cannot help but affect visible and invisible worlds throughout time and space. When you sit, the whole world sits. The world, this world, is sitting you, pouring out boundless and inexhaustible support. It's not quite right to say support. It's just one entirety, could not be more near. Thich Nhat Hanh put this so simply: peace is every step. He didn't say peace is in every step. Peace is every step. You are that. You are the pilgrimage. What are we to make of this when war rages on? What about this peace, unconditioned, unconditional, when conditions in Ukraine grow more barbaric by the day, by the hour? Over the last few weeks, I've been gratefully in touch with the family of one of our Sangha members in the UK, Karen Morham. Karen has been in the hospital, critically ill and quite weak, but her spirit recognizably strong, resilient. It looked like she might come home for a long, quiet recovery. But then she died in the early hours of the morning on Wednesday, this last Wednesday. A little over a month ago, Karen and I met for a regular practice session on Zoom. We went right to it. At the end, she asked if I had time to hear a story. Karen shared that her parents were Ukrainian immigrants to the UK. Her father had been an activist, a member of the resistance from afar. After her parents died, when it seemed, well, safe, when they were no longer concerned, Karen and her sister made a pilgrimage to Ukraine, including to the village where her father's family had an estate. Nothing remained of it. A group of villagers went with them, she said, to find the land where the estate had been. They came to a clearing, a bend in the river, and stopped. It was here. The group stood in silence. Then one of the women, one of the villagers accompanying them, began to sing. One by one, they joined in an old folk song grandmothers would sing to their grandchildren. Karen was lit from within, telling that story by the beauty of the people, their boundless generosity, their hearts wide open despite such a history of loss. Sometime back, not too long ago, Karen had written an email. Here's part of it. It was a lovely, inspiring day yesterday, she wrote. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I couldn't stay till the very end, but at 10 o'clock English time, I knew sloth and sleepiness would overwhelm me for the last sit. I want to share two amazing zazens with you. The first during the Zazenkai, while I was sitting with Mu, my new koan, hanging in there somewhere. My breathing seemed to change until it was not just me breathing, but the earth, trees, stars, the house, everything. And I knew it was Mu breathing everything. Everything, including me, was Mu. And today, she goes on, during Zazen, it happened again, only this time went further. Everything turned into light. A light I could not see, but knew was there. Mu was light. I was. Every single thing in the universe was pure light. For some reason, my eyes had closed, but I felt I must open them slightly, which I usually do, she writes, to let this luminosity inside me burst out into love and compassion for the world, which it did, though it was there all the time. But it made my heart literally tremble, and joyful tears filled me, which mingled with this transcendent light. I'm trying to find words for the inexplicable. There aren't any, as you know. It was profound, mysterious, joyful. I've been walking with awe and wonder all day. The last time I met with Karen, she presented her koan by singing a Ukrainian lullaby. Her voice quiet, clear, heart broken open, unconditional peace. May each person's powerful presence have peaceful consequences that cannot be fully foreseen. The koans are full of stories about pilgrimage. One is set in a small tea shop located at a crossroads on the way to Taizan. Taizan is a mountain with 5 peaks that was revered as the dwelling place of Manchusri. Manchusri, the Bodhisattva of great wisdom. Monks on pilgrimage would stop at the fork in the road and ask a wise old woman in the shop, what is the way to Taizan? Every time, the old woman responded, go straight on. when Bodhidharma was walking in the mountains with his disciple, Eka or Huike, Bodhidharma asks, "What direction should we go?" Eka often walked on that terrain and was familiar with the paths. He said, "Go straight on." Bodhidharma responded, "If you go straight on, you cannot move a step." At this, Eka was enlightened. This one body, if you realize this wholeness, this one existence, you cannot make a step. You can't go anywhere. Wherever you look, it's your own body, already there, already whole, complete, nothing outside of it. Go straight on. Right here, right now, you are that. Eka's enlightenment story resounds with this. He hears Bodhidharma's words, "If you go straight on, you cannot move a step." I mean, maybe suddenly he realizes he's been there all along. That wall you're facing is your body. That sound you hear, that sensation you feel. I keep saying one empty, infinite entirety. Just these words can't touch it. It's okay. One awareness, the whole indivisible fabric of it. Blessedly, this is not where Eka began, as Jinko began. Blessedly, because without the gap, he might not have seen so clearly the great dissolution, the falling away of any distance, any division, any possibility of duality. He might not have seen the absolute oneness of body, mind, existence. And he might not have given us a koan that points to the heart of our own searching, this pilgrimage of practice. And right there, right in that heart, the peace we seek. So this winding way, this pilgrimage up to this koan, takes us to case 41 of the Gateless Gate or Mumonkan. Bodhidharma puts the mind to rest. Here's the case. Bodhidharma sat facing the wall. The second patriarch, standing in the snow, cut off his arm and said, "Your disciple's mind is not yet at peace. I beg you, master, give it rest." Bodhidharma said, "Bring your mind to me and I will put it to rest." The patriarch said, "I have searched for the mind, but have never been able to find it." Bodhidharma said, "I have finished putting it to rest for you." Familiar to many of us, this case. So new. so utterly current. Bodhidharma sat facing the wall. That's a koan for a lifetime. Bodhidharma, who made the journey from India to China when he was already more than 100 years old, met the emperor, crossed the Yangtze River on a blade of grass, it is said, trekked to Shaolin Temple, and there, or in a cave by the temple, sat for 9 years facing the wall. There's that legend that he actually ripped off his eyelids to be more awake, alert. What is that wall gazing? What did he see? What is this? Bodhidharma sat facing a wall. We are sitting in his sitting. Word reaches a young man, unnamed in this case, but we know him to be Jinko, later named Eka by Bodhidharma. Eka means wisdom is possible. Jinko starts out as a scholar, reading widely, devotedly, but he realizes words and doctrines will not resolve his doubt. He becomes a monk and wanders about on pilgrimage, practicing, studying, seeking the way. Master Keizan, the compiler of the transmission of light, the Denkoroku, with these amazing teisho for each case, he writes about Jinko. One day, he came upon the teaching of prajna, wisdom, in a Buddhist book and grasped it spontaneously in a flash. After that, he sat peacefully in zazen, day and night. After 8 years, in the serene silence, Jinko has a vision. With the help of his teacher, he takes this as a sign to travel south to Bodhidharma. This story is quite detailed. It's actually, Jinko has this, just shattering headache, and he goes to his teacher for help, to be cured, to be healed. And his teacher can see that there are these 5 protrusions on his skull. And it said that his bones were being replaced, and that this is a sign. These 5 lumps, like mountain peaks, go south, go to that mountain. He becomes the place he's going. This teacher tells him to go to Bodhidharma. He will be your teacher. So Jinko goes. Keizan's record says it was the 9th day of the 12th month in the year 528. Here's a bit more of Keizan's description. This scene when Jinko arrives. Keizan writes, great master Bodhidharma would not allow him, Jinko, to enter the room. So Jinko stood outside. That night, it snowed hard, but he remained standing in the snow, waiting for dawn. Falling snow buried him to the waist, and the cold pierced his bones. Tears fell and froze drop by drop. The tears made him even colder. He thought to himself, when the ancients sought the way, they crushed their bones and extracted the marrow, drew blood to relieve hunger, spread their hair to cover mud, and threw themselves off cliffs to feed tigers. if it was like this in ancient times, what sort of person am I? Kazan writes, thus thinking, he constantly strengthened his resolve and remained firmly standing, not moving even an inch. So dawn comes, and Bodhidharma has pity for Jinko. You have stood a long time in the snow. What do you want? Jinko says, I beg you, Master, in your compassion, please open the gate of mercy and save all beings. As far as I know, this is the only instance in the koans when a student seeking guidance, desperately seeking peace of mind, so clearly expresses the Bodhisattva way. Have mercy on all beings and teach me. My awakening cannot be apart from the awakening of all. Bodhidharma challenges him. Are you really up to it? Are you prepared to surrender everything, to drop all conditions? Bodhidharma says, the highest subtle way of Buddha cannot be attained without an immeasurably long training and almost unbearable effort. It can never be achieved by puny virtue, shallow wisdom, faint inspiration, or self-conceit. And he turns back to the wall. Wow. Jinko's yearning intensifies. It's said he pulls out a small knife from inside his robe, cuts off his arm below the elbow, and presents it to Bodhidharma. A desperate, even barbaric expression of urgency. Whether or not it happened this way isn't the issue. The desperate mangling points to the depth of human suffering and to the extent of its savagery, you could say. A common instruction when working with a koan is to become one with it, be the koan. In this case, that clearly doesn't mean you should cut off your arm or in any way mutilate what the Buddha calls this fathom-long body. But what are we being shown to cut off? The Buddha is thought often to have said, I teach one thing and one thing only, suffering and the end to suffering. The word suffering, Pali and Sanskrit, dukkha, carries the meaning of dis-ease, dissatisfaction, dislocation, dysfunction, an image likened to a wheel that is out of alignment, off its axis. It can't roll freely, can't function as it's meant to. Buddha taught that the root cause of our suffering is craving, desire, our sense of lack, of failure, of insufficiency. Not enough, I'm missing something, what's wrong with me? And this craving brings on the three poisons: greed, ill will, delusion, or greed, aversion, ignorance, wanting, not seeing who we truly are. the I stands out in each of these configurations, that separate I set up at the center of our experience, that delusive, constructed self, propped up by a false sense of security, delusion upon delusion. We see this unfolding now in our world in devastating ways. That I, that separate I, needs defending. And what a defense we build, like a vast scaffolding holding up the walls of who we think we are, cutting us off. Actually, not really, but we think as part of the delusion that we're cut off from the wellspring of what it is to be truly human, from gratitude, humility, and compassion, from freedom, and from peace. Your disciple's mind is not yet at peace. I beg you, Master, give it rest. Bring your mind to me. Show me that mind. Show me that lack. I'll put it to rest. This is now addressed to us. Bring me your mind. Years ago, early on in my teacher training that continues in full force, I was invited to give a teisho at the annual Kinshukai, this gathering of teachers from all around the world. It was a daunting invitation, to say the least. My life also at that time was at a particular place of upheaval and unease. So this koan came up. At the time, I was writing my dissertation on top of this great upheaval. The theme of my project was pilgrimage, not so much a geographical trek as a pilgrimage of the heart by way of language. The text, the primary text I was reading, unpacking, all these different angles, was Psalm 90, a poem that I had come to read as what's called a content chiasm. I think it was my musician self, my former life had been as a musician, and I sort of turned that lens on this text, and it read like in music, a rondo form, A, B, C, D, C, B, A. And I could see this, these recursions happening in the text. It's so beautiful. Psalm 90 is the only psalm in the Psalter attributed to Moses, a figure who is repeatedly associated with what is called the mountain of God, not unlike the mountain of Manchushri. Working with the text, that pattern emerged, going and returning, but with a change, a transformation. All these loops. The psalm begins in refuge, passes through fire, and ends in a kind of empty-handed offering. So one day, looking closely at that recursive pattern that I had sketched, like a V, because it kind of comes to a point, the middle 5 verses, and I had it laying on its side on the page. And suddenly, for some reason, it turned like this. The text became a mountain. The title for that pilgrimage project came into view: Passage to Wisdom. The turning point in the psalm is the plea: teach us to count our days truly, that we might bring forth a heart of wisdom. What is the wisdom of counting our days truly? Might it be one, or sitting, counting the breath, each breath, 3, nothing but 3. Or as Sylvia Ostertag put it, fully arriving in the peace of this moment. Bodhidharma gave Eka his name. Wisdom is possible. Bring me your mind and I will put it to rest. So long has Eka been searching, been on the way, seeking. I have searched for the mind, but have never been able to find it. There is wisdom there, and peace, the great possibility. Bodhidharma points to it. I have finished putting your mind to rest. But according to the record, it's another 7 or 8 years before Eka clearly discovers that absolute rest for himself. Sees and knows the great resolution. Walking in the mountains, Bodhidharma says, if you go straight on, you cannot move a step. And Eka says, all relations have come to an end for me. That's how he expresses his experience. All relations have come to an end. There is just one. And each bit is all of it. How can we discover this wisdom, this light, this peace for ourselves? Go straight on, says the old woman of Taizan. What is that step? Asks Bodhidharma. Is there anything outside it? Or taking a cue from Karen, my breathing seemed to change until it was not just me breathing, but the earth, trees, stars, the house, everything. Everything turned into light, a light I could not see, but knew was there. Mu was light. I was every single thing in the universe was pure light. That's what Jinko, the name, means, pure light. The one whose pilgrimage takes him to Bodhidharma and whose plea for guidance already expresses the profound oneness he comes to see for himself. There is just one awakening. It implicates each of us. Cannot but include all of us. You are that. So I'd like to close with a very short passage from Dogen, from a Dharma Hall discourse about these two amazing masters. Dogen wrote, "Do you people want to comprehend the ancestral teacher?" That's Bodhidharma. "He leapt over oceans and mountains, seeking one who could know himself." Do you want to know the second ancestor? That's Eka, Huike. "He moved heaven and earth and established great peace." Ultimately, how can one describe them? Dogen writes. We do not know where those two Buddhas have gone. The breeze of their truth has spread a joyful sound through 10,000 ages. Even in this cacophony, a joyful sound. Where have they gone? These masters who infuse us with their practice. Fully arrived. Fully arriving. Thank you for your practice, for this shared practice.